Lieutenant Sarah Chun pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The sounds of gunfire echoed through the abandoned warehouse district of Kandahar, Afghanistan. Dust particles danced in the dim moonlight, filtering through broken windows as she clutched her radio with trembling fingers. "Base, this is Echo 7, she whispered into the device, her voice barely audible above the distant explosions. "I'm reporting enemy movement in Grid 7 Alpha. Multiple hostiles with heavy equipment moving toward forward operating base Mitchell." Static crackled through the radio before a gruff voice responded. "Echo 7, we have no intel supporting enemy activity in that sector. Are you certain of your position?" Sarah's jaw clenched. She had been a military intelligence officer for 3 years, and her observations had always been accurate. She peered around the corner again, watching as dark figures moved sophisticated equipment under cover of darkness. These weren't ordinary insurgents. Their movements were too coordinated, their gear too advanced. "Base, I'm certain. I count at least 40 hostiles with what appears to be anti-aircraft missiles. They're setting up for an attack on our morning supply convoy." The voice on the radio sounded irritated. "Negative, Echo 7. Satellite imagery shows no unusual activity in your area. Return to base immediately." Sarah's hand shook as she switched off the radio. She had been dismissed again. For months, her reports about unusual enemy activity had been questioned, doubted, or completely ignored by her superiors. Being one of only 12 women in her unit made every observation feel like it was under a microscope. She crept closer to get a better look at the enemy position. Through her night vision scope, she could see something that made her blood run cold. The leader of the group turned slightly, and on his forearm was a tattoo that looked like a black dragon with spread wings. She had seen that mark before in classified intelligence reports about a dangerous terrorist cell known as the Black Angels. The Black Angels were supposedly a myth, a ghost story told around military bases. Intelligence agencies had been hunting them for years without success. They were said to be responsible for some of the most devastating attacks against coalition forces, but no one had ever confirmed their existence. Sarah fumbled for her camera, trying to capture evidence of what she was seeing. The zoom lens focused on the dragon tattoo, just as the man raised his arm to signal his team. The distinctive black wings stretched across his forearm, exactly as described in the classified file she had memorized. A branch snapped behind her. Sarah spun around to find herself face to face with 2 armed insurgents. Her training kicked in immediately. She rolled to her left, drawing her sidearm in one fluid motion. The first shot rang out, echoing through the night like thunder. The firefight was brief but intense. Sarah's years of combat training served her well as she used the warehouse's maze of corridors and abandoned equipment to her advantage. When the shooting stopped, both attackers lay motionless, but Sarah knew their gunfire had alerted the main group to her presence. She grabbed her gear and ran through the dark streets, her boots splashing through puddles of murky water. Behind her, she could hear voices shouting in Arabic and the sound of vehicles starting up. The Black Angels were mobilizing to hunt her down. Sarah reached her concealed motorcycle and kicked it to life. The engine roared as she sped through the narrow alleyways of Kandahar, taking a circuitous route back to base to ensure she wasn't followed. Her mind raced as fast as her motorcycle. She had seen the Black Angels with her own eyes, photographed their leader's distinctive tattoo, and witnessed them preparing for a major attack. But she knew what would happen when she reported this. Her commanding officers would question her again, doubt her observations, and probably order a psychological evaluation. They had already made it clear they thought she was seeing threats where none existed. As she approached the base's security checkpoint, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going directly to her commanding officer, she would document everything she had witnessed tonight. Every detail, every photograph, every piece of evidence. She would build a case so strong that no one could dismiss her report. The guard at the checkpoint waved her through after checking her identification. Sarah parked her motorcycle and walked quickly toward the intelligence building, her camera, and notes clutched tightly in her hands. She had less than 6 hours before the morning convoy was scheduled to depart, and she was determined to save those soldiers' lives, whether her superiors believed her or not. In her small office, Sarah spread out maps of the area and began writing her report. She described the enemy positions, their equipment, and, most importantly, the Black Angel's dragon tattoo she had photographed. As she worked, she could hear the sounds of the base waking up around her. Soldiers preparing for another day, unaware that danger was approaching. Sarah had always believed that the truth would eventually come to light. Tonight, she hoped she was right. The lives of her fellow soldiers depended on someone, somewhere, taking her seriously. She just had to find the right person who would listen before it was too late. The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Sarah Chun stood outside Colonel Bradley's office, her report clutched in her sweaty palms. She had been waiting for 20 minutes, watching through the glass door as her commanding officer reviewed what she knew would be another dismissal of her intelligence. Colonel Bradley was a career military man who had little patience for what he considered unsubstantiated claims. At 45, he had seen enough young officers jump at shadows to fill a cemetery. His weathered face bore the scars of 3 tours in Iraq, and his gray eyes held the kind of skepticism that came from years of separating real threats from false alarms. Enter came the gruff command from inside the office. Sarah straightened her uniform and walked in, saluting crisply before placing her report on the colonel's desk. Sir, urgent intelligence regarding enemy activity in Grid 7 Alpha. The morning convoy is in immediate danger. Colonel Bradley didn't even look up from his coffee. Chun, we've been through this before. Your reports about mysterious enemy forces have been investigated multiple times. Satellite surveillance shows nothing unusual in that sector. Sir, with all due respect, I have photographic evidence of a terrorist cell known as the Black Angels. They're preparing to attack our supply convoy with anti-aircraft missiles. This time, Colonel Bradley did look up, his expression a mixture of frustration and concern. The Black Angels? Chun, that's classified information from intelligence briefings. Are you telling me you've been reading files above your clearance level? Sarah's heart sank. She realized her mistake immediately. Sir, I have clearance for those files as part of my intelligence officer training. I recognize the tattoo from previous briefings about potential threats. What tattoo? The colonel's voice was sharp now, his attention finally focused on her words. Sarah opened her report to the photographs she had taken. The leader had a black dragon with spread wings tattooed on his forearm. It matches exactly with the descriptions in the classified reports about the Black Angels terrorist cell. Colonel Bradley studied the photographs for a long moment. The images were grainy, taken in low light conditions, but the dragon tattoo was clearly visible. His expression softened slightly, but his voice remained stern. These photos could be of anyone, Chun. A tattoo doesn't prove the existence of a terrorist cell that intelligence agencies have been chasing for years without success. Sir, they had advanced weapons, coordinated movements, and were positioning for an attack on our convoy route. At minimum, shouldn't we delay the convoy until we can investigate further? The colonel leaned back in his chair, studying Sarah with tired eyes. Lieutenant, I understand your dedication to protecting our forces, but I cannot delay military operations based on unconfirmed intelligence from a single source. The convoy has supplies that forward operating base Mitchell desperately needs. Sarah felt her frustration building. Sir, what if I'm right? What if those soldiers walk into an ambush because we didn't take proper precautions? And what if you're wrong again, Chun? What if we start jumping at every shadow and disrupting operations based on fears rather than facts? I have to make decisions based on verified intelligence, not suspicions. The radio crackled to life on Colonel Bradley's desk. Colonel, this is Convoy Commander. We're preparing to depart on schedule. Weather conditions are favorable and route reconnaissance shows all clear. Colonel Bradley picked up the radio. Roger that, Convoy Commander. Proceed as planned. He looked at Sarah as he set the radio down. The decision has been made, Lieutenant. The convoy departs in 30 minutes. Sarah saluted stiffly. Sir, I request permission to accompany the convoy as additional security. Absolutely not. You're needed here for other intelligence duties. Besides, if you're right about this threat, I'm not sending you into harm's way. As Sarah left the colonel's office, her mind was racing. She had done everything by the book, followed proper procedures, and provided photographic evidence. Yet her report had been dismissed once again. She walked quickly back to her office, where she found her friend and fellow intelligence officer, Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, waiting with a concerned expression. Sarah, I heard raised voices from the colonel's office. Another report that didn't go over well. Marcus, I saw them. The Black Angels. They're real, and they're planning to attack the convoy. But nobody believes me. She showed him the photographs on her camera. Look at this tattoo. It's exactly what we studied in our intelligence briefings. Marcus examined the photos carefully. He was a methodical man who rarely jumped to conclusions, which made his opinion valuable to Sarah. After several minutes, he looked up with a troubled expression. Sarah, these photos are compelling, but they're also circumstantial evidence. However, I believe you saw something significant out there. Then, help me convince someone who can stop that convoy. Marcus shook his head sadly. Sarah, you've reported unusual activity 6 times in the past 3 months. Each time, follow-up investigations found nothing. I'm not saying you're wrong, but you understand why people are skeptical. Sarah slumped in her chair, feeling defeated. So what am I supposed to do? Watch those soldiers drive into an ambush because everyone thinks I'm seeing threats that don't exist. There might be another option, Marcus said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else could hear. General Harrison is visiting the base today for an inspection. He's got 40 years of military experience and a reputation for listening to his soldiers. If anyone might take your report seriously, it's him. Sarah's eyes lit up with hope. When will he be here? His convoy arrives in 15 minutes. But, Sarah, you'd be going over your commanding officer's head. That's career suicide if you're wrong. And it's literal suicide for those soldiers if I'm right and do nothing. Marcus nodded grimly. Then, you'd better make your case convincing. General Harrison doesn't suffer fools, but he also doesn't ignore genuine threats. If the Black Angels are real, and if they're planning what you think they're planning, he's probably the only person on this base with enough authority to stop it. Sarah gathered her evidence and prepared to take the biggest risk of her military career. In 10 minutes, she would either save lives or destroy her own future. As she walked toward the helicopter landing pad, where General Harrison's convoy would arrive, she prayed that someone, finally, would believe her. The sound of helicopter rotors filled the morning air as General Robert Harrison's aircraft touched down on the landing pad. Sarah Chun stood at attention with the other officers who had assembled to greet the visiting general, her heart hammering against her ribs. She clutched her intelligence report behind her back, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether soldiers lived or died. General Harrison stepped out of the helicopter with the confident stride of a man who had spent 4 decades in military service. At 62, he was still imposing, with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. His chest displayed an impressive array of ribbons and medals, including 3 Purple Hearts and a Medal of Honor from his service in Vietnam. Colonel Bradley stepped forward to greet the general, saluting smartly. General Harrison, welcome to Forward Operating Base Kandahar. We're honored by your visit, sir. Thank you, Colonel. I'm here to assess our intelligence operations and review current threat assessments in this sector. The general's voice was deep and authoritative, carrying the weight of command experience. As the official greeting party began to move toward the main building, Sarah made her decision. She stepped forward, intercepting the group. General Harrison, sir, I'm Lieutenant Sarah Chun, intelligence officer. I have urgent information about an imminent threat to our forces. Colonel Bradley's face darkened with anger. Lieutenant Chun, return to your duties immediately. The general doesn't need to be bothered with. General Harrison raised his hand, silencing the colonel. His experienced eyes studied Sarah carefully, taking in her determined expression and the way she held herself. What kind of threat, Lieutenant? Sarah handed him her report with steady hands. Sir, I've identified a terrorist cell known as the Black Angels preparing to attack our morning supply convoy. I have photographic evidence of their leader and their weapons positioning. The general accepted the report and opened it, his expression becoming more serious as he examined the photographs. Colonel Bradley stepped closer, his voice tense with embarrassment. General, Lieutenant Chun has a history of reporting threats that our investigations have been unable to substantiate. This particular claim involves a terrorist group that intelligence agencies consider largely mythical. General Harrison continued studying the photographs without looking up. Colonel, in my 40 years of service, I've learned that the most dangerous threats are often the ones we dismiss as mythical. He pointed to the tattoo visible in Sarah's photograph. This dragon marking, I've seen it before. The group fell silent. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she saw recognition dawn in the general's eyes. Sir, she ventured quietly. General Harrison looked up from the report, his expression grave. In 1987, I was part of a classified operation in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation. We encountered a group of fighters who called themselves the Black Angels. They used this exact symbol. He tapped the photograph. Our intelligence suggested they were wiped out years ago. Colonel Bradley looked stunned. Sir, are you saying this terrorist cell actually exists? I'm saying that if Lieutenant Chun has photographed someone wearing this mark, we need to take her intelligence very seriously. The general turned to Sarah. Tell me exactly what you observed, Lieutenant. Leave out nothing. Sarah took a deep breath and began her detailed account. She described the coordinated movements of the 40 fighters, their advanced weapons systems, and the sophisticated anti-aircraft missiles she had witnessed. As she spoke, General Harrison asked pointed questions that demonstrated his deep understanding of military tactics and terrorist operations. The positioning you described suggests they're planning to hit the convoy at the narrow pass through the mountains, the general said thoughtfully. It's the perfect ambush site. Yes, sir. That's exactly where I believe they intend to strike. General Harrison turned to Colonel Bradley. Colonel, what's the status of the morning convoy? They departed 20 minutes ago, sir. They're carrying medical supplies and ammunition to Forward Operating Base Mitchell. Get them on the radio immediately. I want that convoy stopped until we can investigate Lieutenant Chen's intelligence. Colonel Bradley hesitated. Sir, with all respect, halting military operations based on unconfirmed intelligence could set a dangerous precedent. The general's voice became ice cold. Colonel, I've seen what the Black Angels are capable of. If they're truly active again, that convoy is driving into a massacre. Get them on the radio now. As Colonel Bradley reluctantly contacted the convoy, General Harrison pulled Sarah aside. Lieutenant, I want you to know that what you've done today took considerable courage. Many soldiers would have given up after having their reports dismissed repeatedly. Sir, I just couldn't stand by and watch fellow soldiers walk into danger. That's exactly the kind of thinking that saves lives in this business. The general studied her with approval. Tell me, what made you certain enough about this threat to risk your career by approaching me directly? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sir, I've been trained to recognize patterns and assess threats. Everything about what I observed indicated a sophisticated, coordinated attack. The Black Angels tattoo was just the final piece of evidence that confirmed what my training was already telling me. General Harrison nodded approvingly. Your instincts serve you well, Lieutenant. I've seen too many good soldiers die because someone ignored the warnings of junior officers who were actually paying attention to what was happening on the ground. Colonel Bradley returned, his face pale. General, we've lost radio contact with the convoy. Their last transmission was 15 minutes ago as they entered the mountain pass. The general's expression hardened. That confirms it. They're under attack. He turned to his aide. Give me a tactical response team airborne immediately. Full combat, no doubt. Sarah felt a mixture of vindication and dread. She had been right about the threat, but her warning might have come too late to save the soldiers in that convoy. Sir, request permission to accompany the rescue mission. I know exactly where the Black Angels were positioned. Permission granted, Lieutenant. Your intelligence might be crucial to finding our people alive. As they prepared for the rescue mission, General Harrison placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. Lieutenant Shun, your persistence may have saved lives today. Don't ever let anyone convince you to stop trusting your training and instincts. For the first time in months, Sarah felt that her voice had been heard. Now, she just hoped it hadn't been too late to make a difference. The sound of helicopters starting up filled the air as the rescue mission prepared to launch, racing against time to reach their fellow soldiers before the Black Angels could complete their deadly ambush. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the morning sky like a blade, its rotors beating a steady rhythm as it raced toward the mountain pass. Sarah Chun sat strapped into her seat, her hands gripping her rifle as she watched the rugged Afghan landscape blur past below. Beside her, General Harrison studied tactical maps while coordinating with other rescue aircraft through his headset. Echo Team, this is Rescue 1. The general spoke into his microphone. We're approaching the target area. Lieutenant Shan will guide us to the enemy positions she identified. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 12 soldiers were missing in that convoy, and their lives might depend on the accuracy of her intelligence. Through her headset, she could hear the pilot reporting their approach to the mountain pass. Rescue 1, this is Eagle Eye, came a voice from their surveillance aircraft. We have smoke rising from the pass. Looks like vehicle fires. Sarah's heart sank. The convoy had been hit, just as she had predicted. She leaned toward the window, using her binoculars to scan the terrain below. The narrow mountain pass was exactly as she remembered from her surveillance the night before, but now black smoke marked the location of burning vehicles. General, the enemy positions should be on the eastern ridge, approximately 200 meters above the road, Sarah reported. They had clear sight lines for an ambush. General Harrison relayed this information to the other aircraft in their formation. 2 Apache attack helicopters flanked their transport, their weapons systems ready for engagement. The rescue mission included 30 elite soldiers, medics, and explosive ordnance disposal specialists. As they descended toward the pass, Sarah could see the devastating results of the Black Angels' attack. 3 convoy vehicles lay twisted and burning on a mountain road. One had been flipped completely over by what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade hit. Another had crashed into the rocky wall of the pass, its armor pierced by anti-tank weapons. Rescue 1, we have movement in the debris field, reported the pilot. Possible survivors taking cover behind the overturned vehicle. Sarah grabbed her binoculars and focused on the area. She could see figures in military uniforms moving behind cover, but she also spotted muzzle flashes from the ridge above them. The Black Angels were still there, pinning down any convoy survivors. Sir, the enemy is maintaining their position on the eastern ridge. They're keeping our people trapped in the kill zone. General Harrison made a quick tactical decision. Eagle Eye, paint the enemy positions with laser designation. Apache 1 and 2, engage targets on the eastern ridge. We'll insert the rescue team behind the convoy position. The Apache helicopters swooped in like deadly birds of prey. Their chain guns opened fire on the ridge, sending streams of high-velocity rounds into the Black Angels' positions. Explosions blossomed along the mountainside as Hellfire missiles struck enemy weapon emplacements. Sarah watched through her scope as figures in dark clothing scattered from their positions. She caught glimpses of the distinctive black dragon tattoos on several of the fighters as they fled to backup positions deeper in the rocks. Rescue team, prepare for fast rope insertion, commanded the pilot. 30 seconds. Sarah checked her equipment one final time. She carried a medical kit in addition to her combat gear, knowing that wounded soldiers would need immediate attention. As the helicopter hovered above the crash site, thick ropes dropped from both sides of the aircraft. Go, 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 shouted the team leader. Sarah slid down the rope, her boots hitting the rocky ground hard. Around her, the rescue team spread out in a defensive formation, securing the landing zone while medics rushed toward the burning vehicles. The smell of smoke, fuel, and gunpowder filled the air. Survivors behind the overturned truck called out Sergeant Williams, the team medic. We got wounded. Sarah followed the medics to the defensive position where convoy survivors had taken shelter. She found Staff Sergeant Martinez clutching a bloody bandage against his shoulder, his eyes wide with pain and relief at seeing the rescue team. "Thank God you're here," Martinez gasped. "They hit us with everything they had. RPGs, heavy machine guns, anti-tank missiles. It was like they knew exactly where we'd be." "How many survivors?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside him to assess his wounds. "8 of us made it out of the vehicles. Corporal Johnson is hurt bad, and Private Foster hasn't regained consciousness since the first explosion." Sarah began treating Martinez's shoulder wound, while other medics worked on the more seriously injured soldiers. Around them, the rescue team maintained a defensive perimeter as gunfire continued to echo from the ridges above. Lieutenant Chun called General Harrison through her radio. The Apache crews report that the enemy fighters are withdrawing deeper into the mountains, but they're maintaining sniper positions. "We need to evacuate the wounded immediately." Sarah looked around at the injured soldiers. 3 needed immediate medical evacuation, while the others could walk with assistance. The overturned convoy vehicle provided some cover, but they were still exposed to sniper fire from multiple directions. "Sir, we need smoke cover for the evacuation," she reported. "The enemy has clear sight lines from at least 3 positions." Within minutes, smoke grenades filled the pass with thick gray clouds. The medevac helicopter descended through the smoke while the rescue team prepared the wounded for transport. Sarah helped carry Private Foster on a stretcher, noting the young soldier's pale complexion and shallow breathing. As the wounded were loaded onto the helicopter, Sarah remained behind with half the rescue team to collect intelligence and search for any classified materials from the convoy. She moved carefully through the wreckage, documenting the types of weapons used in the attack and collecting any evidence that might help identify the Black Angels. In the debris near the lead vehicle, she found something that made her blood run cold. Scattered among the wreckage were photographs of coalition military bases, convoy routes, and troop movements. The Black Angels hadn't just ambushed this convoy by chance. They had detailed intelligence about coalition operations. "General, this is Chun," she radioed urgently. "The enemy had detailed intelligence photos of our bases and operations. This wasn't a random attack. They're conducting organized intelligence gathering." General Harrison's voice crackled through her headset. "Collect everything you can find, Lieutenant. This changes everything about how we assess the threat level." As Sarah gathered the intelligence materials, she realized that her discovery of the Black Angels was just the beginning. This terror cell wasn't just conducting isolated attacks. They were building a comprehensive intelligence network that threatened every coalition operation in the region. The rescue mission had been successful, but it had also revealed that the danger was far greater than anyone had imagined. The Black Angels weren't just a mythical terrorist group. They were a sophisticated enemy with resources, intelligence, and the ability to strike precisely where coalition forces were most vulnerable. As the final helicopter lifted off from the mountain pass, carrying Sarah and the last of the rescue team back to base, she knew that her fight to be taken seriously was far from over. The Black Angels were real, they were dangerous, and stopping them would require every bit of skill and determination she could muster. 2 weeks after the convoy rescue, Sarah Chin stood before a packed briefing room at Coalition Intelligence Headquarters in Kabul. The room was filled with senior officers, intelligence analysts, and special operations commanders from multiple nations. At the head table sat General Harrison, who had specifically requested that Sarah present her findings about the Black Angels terrorist network. The transformation in how people viewed Sarah's intelligence work had been dramatic. Where once her reports were dismissed or ignored, now senior officials sought her expertise on terrorist threats. The intelligence materials she had recovered from the convoy ambush had revealed a conspiracy far more extensive than anyone had imagined. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Harrison announced to the assembled crowd, "Lieutenant Chin's investigation has uncovered what may be the most significant terrorist intelligence network operating in this theater. I'll let her present her findings." Sarah stepped up to the podium, her confidence bolstered by weeks of validation and support from the general and his staff. On the large screen behind her, She displayed a map showing Black Angels activity across 3 countries. The evidence we recovered indicates that the Black Angels have been operating for over 15 years, not as a small, isolated cell, but as a sophisticated intelligence network with connections throughout Central Asia, Sarah began. They have infiltrated local government offices, military contractors, and even some coalition support personnel. She clicked to the next slide, showing photographs of the distinctive black dragon tattoos found on captured fighters and in surveillance photos. The dragon symbol serves as both identification and rank indicator. The number of wings on the dragon corresponds to the operative's position in their hierarchy. Colonel Bradley, who now attended every one of Sarah's briefings with respectful attention, raised his hand. "Lieutenant, how were they able to operate undetected for so long?" "Sir, they used a cell structure similar to what intelligence agencies employ. Each cell operated independently, with limited knowledge of the overall network. When individual cells were captured or eliminated, the larger organization remained intact." Sarah advanced to her most significant discovery. "However, our investigation revealed their critical weakness. All communication between cells flows through a central command structure located in the mountains near the Pakistani border." General Harrison leaned forward. "What kind of facility are we talking about, Lieutenant?" "Sir, based on intercepted communications and surveillance data, it appears to be a fortified compound built into natural caves. The facility includes communications equipment, weapons storage, and training areas. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major coordinated attack against multiple coalition targets." The room buzzed with concerned conversations as officers absorbed the implications. Sarah continued her presentation, detailing the evidence that had led to these conclusions. The photographs and documents recovered from the convoy ambush contained detailed intelligence about our operational patterns, base layouts, and convoy schedules. This information could only have been gathered through systematic surveillance over many months. Admiral Thompson from Naval Intelligence stood up. "Lieutenant, what's your assessment of their current operational capability?" Sarah had prepared extensively for this question. "Sir, based on the weapons and coordination observed during the convoy attack, I estimate they have between 200 and 300 active operatives. They possess advanced anti-aircraft systems, communications equipment, and enough explosives to conduct simultaneous attacks on multiple targets." "And their timeline?" asked General Harrison. "Intelligence intercepts suggest they're planning to strike during the upcoming joint operation between coalition forces and Afghan government troops. The operation is scheduled for next month, and we believe they intend to use it as an opportunity to inflict maximum casualties." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Sarah had uncovered not just a terrorist cell, but a major threat to the largest military operation plan for the region. General Harrison stood up. "Lieutenant Shun, based on your analysis, what do you recommend?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been building towards since that night, when she first spotted the Black Angels preparing their ambush. "Sir, I recommend a 3-phase operation. First, we conduct targeted strikes against their known safe houses and weapons caches to disrupt their immediate operational capability. Second, we use special operations teams to assault their main compound and eliminate their command structure. Finally, we implement enhanced security protocols for all coalition operations until we can confirm the network has been neutralized." Admiral Thompson nodded approvingly. "That's a comprehensive strategy, Lieutenant. Do you have specific intelligence about the location of their main compound?" Sarah smiled for the first time during the briefing. "Yes, sir. 2 days ago, our surveillance team identified the exact location using communication intercepts and satellite imagery. The compound is located in Grid 47 Charlie, approximately 40 kilometers from the Pakistani border." General Harrison's expression showed both pride and determination. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant. I'm authorizing immediate implementation of your recommended operation." He turned to address the room. "Gentlemen and ladies, Operation Black Dragon will commence in 72 hours. Lieutenant Shun will serve as primary intelligence coordinator for the mission. As the briefing concluded and officers began planning the operation, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her situation had changed. 3 weeks ago, her reports were dismissed and her credibility questioned. Now, she was coordinating one of the most significant anti-terrorism operations in the region. Colonel Bradley approached her as the room emptied. "Lieutenant, I owe you an apology. Your persistence and dedication have saved countless lives. I should have listened to your concerns sooner." "Thank you, sir. I understand the position you are in. Unverified intelligence can be just as dangerous as ignored intelligence." "That's true, but your case has taught me the importance of taking every report seriously, especially from officers who demonstrate the kind of attention to detail you've shown." As Sarah walked back to her office, she encountered Sergeant Martinez from the convoy that had been ambushed. His arm was still in a sling, but he was back on duty. He stopped and saluted when he saw her. "Lieutenant, I want to thank you personally. The medics said if your rescue team had arrived even 10 minutes later, some of us wouldn't have made it. Sergeant, I'm just glad we were able to get there in time. How are the others recovering?" "All 8 survivors are back on duty, ma'am. And word has gotten around about how you fought to warn us about that ambush. Every soldier on this base knows that you saved our lives." 3 days later, Operation Black Dragon was successfully executed. Special operations teams destroyed the Black Angels' main compound and captured their leadership, including the man with the dragon tattoo whom Sarah had first photographed. The network that had terrorized coalition forces for years was finally broken. At the operation's conclusion, General Harrison presented Sarah with a commendation for exceptional service and announced her promotion to captain. More importantly to Sarah, he also implemented new protocols ensuring that intelligence reports from field officers would receive thorough investigation regardless of the reporting officer's rank or experience level. "Captain Shun," the general said during the promotion ceremony, "your courage in pursuing the truth, even when others doubted you, exemplifies the best traditions of military service. You've proven that sometimes the most important intelligence comes from soldiers who are willing to trust their training and speak truth to power." As Sarah pinned on her new captain's bars, she thought about all the soldiers whose lives had been saved because she had refused to give up when her reports were dismissed. The Black Angels had been real, their threat had been genuine, and her persistence had made the difference between life and death for dozens of coalition troops. The experience had taught her that being right wasn't always enough. Sometimes you had to fight to be heard, fight to be believed, and fight to make the truth matter. In the end, her determination to protect her fellow soldiers had been stronger than the doubt and dismissal she had faced. Years later, Sarah would continue to serve with distinction, eventually rising to the rank of colonel and establishing new intelligence protocols that ensured the voices of field officers would never again be ignored. The Black Angels case became a cornerstone study in military intelligence training, teaching future officers the importance of persistent investigation and the courage to stand by their convictions when lives were at stake.